about sort of taking back that narrative, and the idea of narrative versus story. Narrative is the art of telling the story, how you connect the pieces. And so being empowered to tell that story through your own experience, that's art. Hi, my name is Shireen Soliman. I'm an artist, an educator, and an advocate, and this is my story. I grew up here in the United States. My family is from Egypt. My parents came here as immigrants. They were alone. All of the rest of our family was in Egypt. So I grew up. In Arabic, we have a phrase that says "fil ghurba," which means to be apart, in the state of missing. So I never quite fit in here. I never really quite fit in Egypt either. When I was 4 years old, my mother would keep me inside and try to keep me busy with activities. So she said, let's draw, let's sit and draw. And I sat down and I started drawing as a 4-year-old, and my drawing was like far superior to her drawing. So she realized I had this talent. She did help to nurture this talent my whole life. So I went to design school. And for me at that time, it was really about creating a fantasy, that story that was a fantasy. So somehow clothing kind of being a way to escape. So I think maybe now it's time for my art to kind of merge the two. It's like the reality can be fantasy and they can inform one another. And so I draw I try to draw every color of skin, every shape and size of body, hair, no hair, hair covered, uncovered. And I was corrected by other professionals in the field. They've got too much hips, they've got too much, curves. They need to sort of be very, very stretched out. Your women are not long and skinny enough. And it wasn't natural for me. This was from 2014. So this was the beginning of the journey where I was sort of taking a stand and saying, I'm not going to go back. And I'm going to kind of start to create illustrations that I think sort of show a wider range of beauty in a way that we can all kind of envision, how fashion and style can be a reflection of the beauty that already exists.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to Dearborn Blog. We are in this together. This is your host, Wissam Charafeddine. We Are in This Together is a non-scripted, live, non-profit broadcast by Dearborn Blog to have conversations that become oral history records of our lives during the COVID-19 pandemic, also known as coronavirus pandemic. These are personal stories of our lives during these unprecedented social isolation measures in a globalized world. I have the pleasure of having Shireen Soliman with me today. Shireen Soliman is an Egyptian-American artist, educator, advocate, and mother living in New York City. Shireen teaches visual communication and design at both Parsons School of Design and Pratt Institute. As a community leader and advocate, she sits on the various boards and councils representing and amplifying the voices and experiences of Muslim Americans. Through the lens of fashion and arts, Shireen explores topics ranging from Muslim American identity, cultural diversity and inclusion, social justice, narrative, and representation. Welcome, Shireen, to We Are in This Together.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank
Alaikum
you
salam.
for having me, Wissam. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Kareem to you. So this is an exciting episode because you are always doing exciting stuff, and you are.
I feel like you can say my laughter. I feel like yes, my life seems a little bit less exciting lately, but yes, I'm glad that I'm still giving off that perception.
We don't have many people like you who are into the profession of fashion design. I've always talked about that. We dress other cultures' fashions because we have a lack of our own designers. I am tired of imitating other cultures' dresses just because we don't have our own. Our own has, what we call our own today is basically where we have left off 1400 years ago. in terms of fashion, to a certain extent, because there is, of course, a lot of movement. There is a lot of, attempts to create our own design. So, can I hear a little bit from you about that?
I I absolutely agree with you in that. I mean, we as Arab Americans, or we as Muslims in general, I think we have kind of reached a tipping point where we're starting to realize that we have spent many decades sort of in our past, sort of, as you say, emulating um, European influenced fashion and perceptions, the way that we speak about fashion, the way that we speak about body ideals, the way that we envision beauty, right? And so all of these fashion and beauty and the standards around how we carry ourselves, how we style ourselves, how we present ourselves, they've been anchored in the Western European um, lens. So I think it's been actually amazing for me in the past few years. I mean, it's really been just the past, honestly, I would say 5 to 6 years, really, where we're finally seeing sort of, we're kind of seeing so much movement. We're seeing sort of a movement throughout the world where the fashion is becoming decentralized. So we're seeing it, sort of the democratization of fashion is what I say, right? So this idea where the center of fashion is no longer, from Europe up on high, dictating to the world, sort of what, this is what fashion is. I sort of, tease my mother if she says, "What is the trend this year?" I'm like, "That's it. Trends are over. Trends are done." Right. So it's no longer this one central source of influence. What we're seeing actually now is obviously huge influence from the East, from the Middle East. We're seeing Muslim and modest fashion now surging. And why? Because a lot of that is obviously anchored and rooted in, sort of this idea of the narrative. So as Muslim women, as women of faith, different faith cultures started to redefine for themselves, what does modesty look like? What does beauty look like? What skin is the appropriate color skin? How much hair? How much, what does body size? All of these ideas that women are now able to kind of express through social media, right? So social media, which has had, obviously we all have a very fraught relationship, but one of the things that it has allowed us to do is to take that mic back and women to tell our own stories. So moving away from the, Eurocentric patriarchal lens to like now letting women tell their own stories. So that's why we're seeing so much movement in the past few years. Coronavirus and COVID is also going to speed up a lot of those changes as well, in terms of, one of the industries, for example, the luxury industry, right? And who gets to dictate, this elite luxury space, the influencers, right? This idea of sort of these very tone deaf, very disconnected, um, source of influence. And so just watching that all kind of come crashing down. So I'm kind of, as many of us are sitting and kind of watching and hoping that there can be one of the many, hopefully, inshallah, optimistically, I think that one of the silver linings of this could be, the crashing and the dismantling of a lot of systems. It was long overdue for a lot of them.
Right. Do you feel that there is positive signs? There's optimistic signs of uh, um, Muslim fashion lines that can become mainstream, and at least in Muslim communities, or. Mhm.
I actually just recently was speaking to a young woman at the new school at Parsons. They have something, a venture lab for young designers, an incubator, right? And so it's been actually a couple seasons ago, I worked with a young woman from Senegal, and she was creating her own modest fashion line. I just spoke with another woman who's trying to create a collective to try to amplify and highlight designers from Africa. Excuse me. And I talked to her about sort of, Egypt, when I was sharing and mentoring and speaking with her, I was speaking to her about Egypt and the fact that in my whole life, when I would go to Egypt, I was very well aware that the design cycle there, consisted of, the designers going to Europe, exactly as you say, buying and styling and taking the photos of everything there, and then having to adapt it to be modest, having to adapt it to be suitable for the Muslim,
Mhm.
for the Egyptian society. So I think what we're seeing now, and what I'm hoping, is that, again, too, with like a lot more platforms, a lot more opportunities, for collectives or for highlighting work. And we're seeing it already. I see it every now and again. I just saw another brand and a lot of accessory brands where the designs are coming directly from Egypt, sourcing from our own heritage, sourcing from our own distinct aesthetic, sourcing from our rich culture, and the art that is being created by Egyptians. And so I'm hoping that, yes, we'll see a lot more of that in the Middle East.
That's awesome. That's good. And you notice that when we talk about Muslim fashion, we're talking about women. And
Yeah,
men too need. I mean, it's not only because of the need of hijab or the kind of inclination towards modesty within the Muslim fashion, um, but also because it's an expression of own culture and philosophy and heritage and history. So men too need to wear things that are related to their character, to their values, to their heritage, and of course we struggle with that. We even struggled with that historically. I mean, we wear the when we left the kufiya wa'gal, when we left that, we wore the tarbush. The
Do you happen to have a tarbush on hand? It's amazing.
I have a tarbush in hand. So we wore the tarbush, but the tarbush is Turkish.
Yes,
So
it is.
after, right, but we were Ottomans, all of us, right?
Yes.
But then when the Ottomans split apart, and then we became, after the Arab Revolt, okay, they didn't want to wear tarbush anymore. Like King Faisal started ordering his people to wear what is it called? A hat, as Iraqis wear it today. It's like a pointy hat that they wear.
The fez?
I forgot the name.
The
Sorry?
The fez?
It's no, a fez is kind of like thick. So there is one that is really it's like a beret, it's anyway. So they struggled with finding alternatives that represent the being stuck to culture. If you notice, like I'll show you a picture. 1 second. Like this is, can you see it? This is King Faisal at the beginning of the Arab Revolt, and this is after like 20 years.
Yep.
He had, now it's a nation state, and he had to communicate with other states, and he had to move away from his family. And I felt sorry because he stuck to his, he even went to Versailles, to the conference of Versailles, wearing his Arab robe. Among all his friends were wearing Western clothing, but he stuck because he wanted to make a point of Arab identity. And then, but as time went on, he had to move on to something more practical. There were no Arab designers that can create something that is unique to us.
But don't forget, Sam, don't forget in the end, the messages that we are absorbing every day. I mean, it's bigger than us. It's so embedded in us, and it takes a lot of introspection really to be able to start to deconstruct and discern, right? Sort of like, what is objectively out there, and what is it that is just because it's so permeated our understanding. So, the inextricable link between sort of fashion and how we perceive power, ultimately, right? And so when we were coming back and forth between sort of women's fashion and men's fashion, right? So the patriarchy in and of itself can sort of code switch between the suits, between the galabeyas, between the bowler hat, and between the tarbush, right? And so that power is already sort of really well established, and it's sort of, it's the women upon, the women's body is the battleground upon which struggles for power are waged. So it's, it really becomes, I mean, that's why I think, for me, obviously, I dare talk about the French. Every time I talk about everything having to do with fashion and power, and I just have a moment, and the French. But anyway, I'm thinking about sort of, there's something that just happened, but we can talk about it later. But, talking about, when we think about messages globally as societies, we have very well absorbed, due to colonialization, due to imperialism, we've well absorbed that message, that power and modernity equals looking like this, and that our heritage and the way that we dressed historically for our climate, for our religion, for our culture, that was that, you know, that message was that we were backwards for dressing in this way, and that we were being saved, you know, to be able to dress in the way of the Europeans. And so I, as an Egyptian, for one, I definitely grew up, and my mother, you know, she definitely raised me well. And so I spent, you know, so many years, you know, memorizing every black and white Egyptian film. And, you know, we would long for the days when we used to look like this. This was when we were modern, but it's actually, this is when we were still sort of very much hypnotically, you know, under this, under the influence of, you know, perceiving that this was the way forward, was to look in this way, which was not inherently our culture, not, you know, not sort of, it wasn't, it wasn't organically the way that we dressed, it was imposed upon us. And so
Right.
unlearning, we're having to collectively as a world kind of unlearn a lot of these messages that we never questioned. We haven't questioned for a long time. So it's definitely time for a reckoning.
Yeah, and we still don't emphasize design, art for our children. You know, I understand, okay, they say, okay, this first generation immigrants, they're survivors, they want to have some financial stability, you know, okay, but we're beyond that now. You know, there's second generation, there's a third generation. We still have a lack of expertise in fashion. I don't see that in school. You know, we don't see that in school. I work in education, you're an educator. I don't see people saying, oh, I'm gonna become a fashion designer, or I'm gonna become I'm gonna do you know, some sort of, you know, design or the artistic fields. But anyway,
I just want to say, I mean, in all of the years, oh my God, I'm on, this is on public stream. I don't want to say how many years I've been teaching, but it is many years, Wissam, many years. So in all the years, I've had 2 Egyptian students, 2. And if I say how many Muslim students I've had in the fashion schools between Parsons and Pratt, it's definitely less than 5, right? So I would say that, you know, it's, we're, you know, as far as in my little experience, it's been very few still, but the change is coming. There are so many Muslim designers, so many. I'm seeing now so many women now realizing that this is not only just a trade, it's not just a skill to know how to sew, it's not just the technical aspect of sewing, you know, the Eid dress. There's so much of a beauty in celebrating the creative aspect as well. So we are seeing many up and coming Muslim designers. We're seeing Project Runway. We're seeing, you know, a little bit more visibility in many of the artistic fields. For
that's
Muslims.
awesome. That's optimistic. Okay, that's good. So we're on the right path.
We're getting there.
We need
But
more.
when I go to a lot of like the artistic events for art circles here in New York,
Mhm.
I still suffer. I suffer because I'm always the oldest one. So from my generation, I'm still sort of the outlier. But for the younger generation, yes, there is hope. The artists are here. The Muslim artists are coming.
That's great. So if you're hearing us and you're into fashion design, you want some consultation about your career, this is the person. This is the person to contact, and I'm gonna leave you her website too, so you can get some advice from Shireen. Shireen, this is more about a personal story, so nevertheless, I had to, you know, we digress a little bit. But coming back to the personal story, I mean, New York, you know, New York, when you say New York, you see people. And you know how much I love New York. And, you know, I was actually booked to go in early May, a couple of weeks ago, but, you know, everything was canceled. Um, how did this change your life?
After iftar tonight, I actually watched a video that broke my heart. So I had a little bit of a hard earlier part of the evening. So this is a nice way to offset that. Um, it was just one of the many sort of, you know, a journalist, a little editorial piece of somebody walking through the streets of New York and seeing everything sort of, you know, completely quiet and empty and eerie. Um, and so, yeah, I'm missing New York. I'm missing just being able to get on the subway 20 minutes away and have so many people around me. Something that I'm so grateful for about being in New York is that I can close my eyes on a subway, on a street here in Astoria, Queens, where I am, and I can hear minimum 5 different languages at any given time all around me. So I'm always sort of feeling like I'm one of like this global community. And so it's been isolating. I have to tell you, Wissam, actually hearing you say my name made me a little bit nostalgic, because usually around Ramadan I would be with other Arabs. I'd be with a lot of other Arabic speakers to hear my name in the, pronounced in the Arabic way. And so yeah, it's been the quiet and the isolation. It's been intense. It's definitely been intense. So yeah, I don't know.
And this is probably the only Ramadan in our lives that has been that isolated. I mean, never before I've experienced Ramadan in a way that and people are getting sick. Like I have like aunts and uncles around me here, and I have my parents are here, and we go to our parents' house for iftar. Like I'm the only one among my siblings
Mm.
that go for iftar at my parents' house now, and we wear the mask, and we eat. We stay at the long end of the table, and we take the precautions because they're older and we need to protect them. But it's just like impossible. Like my mom, she says, Ramadan without you guys are not. It's not Ramadan. Like it's not. We don't feel it's Ramadan.
Alhamdulillah, because it's so inbred in our culture too, that everything that we say, we have to offset it and say Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. So even though the streets are empty, but Alhamdulillah, I'm not quarantining by myself. I have my 2 children with me, Alhamdulillah. So we form our own community and we make the iftar together, and then we're praying together, and then we're honoring Ramadan together, Alhamdulillah. I also must say Alhamdulillah, we're in Astoria, so I'm in Little Egypt. So as you well know, like steps from my house is like all the Egyptian restaurants. And so we still have Egyptian restaurants that are, and we all Arabic restaurants, and they're still, functioning. You just have to go and pick up the food, and we come and bring it, eat it back, back at the house. So, today is Tuesday. So we have an initiative here called Takeout Tuesday to try to support our small businesses and our restaurants. So we ordered a Ramadan meal tonight. So I don't know if you know what is mumbar?
Of course. If I know Ibrahim, I have to know mumbar.
Yes, that's right. Isn't that where we met, Wissam?
Yes. I think the first time we met there.
So alhamdulillah, we have access to the foods. We have access to, all of the things that we need for the cooking and the baking projects that we're doing, and just trying to instill in my little home, trying to create our little microcosm of Ramadan in such a way. And we have Zoom. So even though I haven't had iftar with my mother, with my sister, with my family, we're all doing Zoom, and we're trying to just kind of stay connected that way. So we have the technology. I'm able to be with you tonight,
Right. I mean, there are the difficulties and challenges, of course. And other than, I mean, alhamdulillah, that we are not suffering from the disease itself, and our families are not, so we're very thankful for that. But on a positive note, I mean, it might be a little bit, what do you call, facetious to say from my side that I'm having the best time of my life right now. I feel I mean, that can be a little bit, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's wrong to say that. But,
no, there's no such thing as wrong. As an educator, we know your experience is your experience. It's valid.
That's how I feel right now. And the only worry I have is going back to what was before that. It's like
I don't think we're ever going back to what was before, quite exactly. So whatever we're going, we don't know yet what we're going into. But I think going back to what was before, going back to normal, I think that's out the window, Wissam. So don't worry about it. It's just we're to prepare for whatever is unknown in front of us.
Right. I'm a futuristic person. I'm an introvert, and I live in Michigan. We don't live in New York, where so we're already kind of the Midwest has its own sort of isolation to a certain extent, and then on top of that, being an introvert, and this has freed us for a lot of it. So let me bring some questions about that, because we have a lot of questions for you and the time is running. I have a question for you here by Ali Charafeddine. He says, what are some of the things you are accomplishing staying at home during the pandemic? By the way, not all the questions I've let you know about before, so be ready to be surprised.
What are things that I'm accomplishing? The thing that's the most sort of immediate for me, it's not terribly glamorous, but it is extremely meaningful for me. So I keep telling my kids over and over again that usually for Ramadan, especially here in Queens, New York, we have so many opportunities to go out to restaurants. There's all kinds of community events. Here in New York City, we actually have iftar in the streets. So in different boroughs, we have the streets open up. We have in Sunnyside, Queens, there's a Turkish cultural center. They have a big Ramadan tent. So we're used to being out and about, and then we're just sort of at one house or another and one event. And so having the time, the luxury of time, and having both of my children, it was a blessing. My daughter is actually here. If the year had gone as everyone would have imagined it would have gone, she would have been in college. She wouldn't have been able to be with us for one more Ramadan. We thought last year was our last Ramadan with her. So having her here, me being able to cook for my kids and to cook with my kids and to kind of create Ramadan in a way that reminded me of my childhood. I'm old enough that my childhood of me remembering to go to Egypt in the summers, Ramadan was back in Egypt, not this past stretch that we had when Ramadan was in the summer, the other one. So that's how young I was. So when I was going back and forth to Egypt, it was Ramadan in the summer. So I have memories of the Ramadan tents. I have the memories of
and Ramadan in Egypt is something else.
Yes, then we would wake up and there would be magically like a feast of food waiting for us, and then we would start to get ready to go out at like 2 a.m. So there's go
Ramadan. Ramadan in Lebanon is very beautiful, Shireen. But my father has studied in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
He still talks about Ramadan in Egypt as the best Ramadan he's ever had. Sayyida Zainab and the things they do at night. So we're connected to the audience. Can you describe a little bit, because not everyone knows, what is it like to live in Astoria, and what is it like to live in Astoria in Ramadan before coronavirus?
Right. So before coronavirus. So yes, like I said, like the stories of the restaurants. We have restaurants here that actually even just everything about the decor, everything about the Ramadan buffets, you would go and you're again, going out at night and being with all the people around you that have also been fasting all day. And then, after the breaking of the fast, finding all the familiar foods. The foods, that's our comfort for everyone, no matter what culture, no matter what age. It spans, it's all of us. It's what connects us as humans, right? So being in those spaces and, a lemma, everyone being together, there's that aspect of community. So, being here in Little Egypt, I'm sort of, yes, I'm in America, but not quite exactly in America, because in here we've kind of created this other world. We have,
and then the diversity, right?
Palestinians, Lebanese. We have so many, from the diaspora.
Queens is the place where most languages are spoken per in the world, and the diversities, and that also includes Muslims, the Muslim diversity. There's nowhere in the world.
Speaking of that, I live one block from an Indonesian mosque. So actually, most of my Ramadans I spend with the Indonesians, actually. So not even with the Arabs. So I'm usually spending Ramadan and they're speaking in Indonesian and they're presenting me. When I go to break fast, my kids and I, we go to break fast at the mosque, the Indonesian mosque, and they're presenting us with foods, the most beautiful color palettes you've ever imagined. Yeah, Wissam. They have like green and pink foods and everything is a mystery. And you just feel like you're bonded through Islam, but it's just so beautiful to be with so many different cultures. So yeah, being in Astoria, being able to just go 2 steps away and find, the very specific rare thing that I need for the soup that I'm making right now. Like we're very comfortable here in Astoria. So having it not sort of function in the way that we're used to, we're navigating new ground and we're just trying to recreate it in our little worlds. And
so yeah, going back to Alex's question, what are you like? Is there something specific that you're accomplishing? Additional thing, like something that you wanna? Did this create extra time for you? Do you have some extra time?
No. So that's why I'm so happy for you that this is working out for you, but not so much. So for me, so I teach at 2 different schools. And I'm also here mothering. Granted, my children are teenagers. I have a high schooler and a college student, but I'm still sort of actively that act of sort of being there to just say, yes, okay, have you woken up? What time is your class? Is this getting done? I need you to be doing this. We have an appointment with your counselor, a Zoom call with your counselor. So it's like it's in the background, and I'm mothering, 24/7, but I'm also preparing, and I had to do a massive shift of the content online, in a way that obviously was just more of like a crisis mode. But now that I'm in quarantine and we're trying to imagine sort of moving forward, I've picked up a course to teach in the summer. So it'll be my first time to build a course completely online from scratch. So actually, that's been taking a lot of my time. And I'll also, if I can, kind of give a plug that during Ramadan, one of the other things that's taken a lot of my attention is that I'm also the chair for Turning Point for Women and Families, which is a nonprofit organization which provides support to domestic violence victims and survivors in the Muslim community. So Ramadan is one of our peak times of the year to try to raise funds, and particularly this year, because we are all of our services have had to go virtually online now, and we're very much trying to do crisis response.
Can you type that for me so I can post it for?
So it's not just even it's not just even just sort of the usual crisis response. We're even working with making sure that people have iftar for the night with Sam. We're making sure that people have they're able to keep their Wi-Fi on. We're helping them pay their utilities. People have lost their jobs. The area of Queens that I live in is a very different picture than what you guys might see then if you watch the videos of Times Square and Manhattan and all these other glamorous spaces in Manhattan. Where we live in Queens is where the actual work is happening. The workers, the Uber drivers, all of the restaurant workers, our healthcare workers, our teachers. So the service industry, it's here. It's Queens, New York. So it's a lot of devastation in terms of the loss of work, food insecurity, and then also to the mental health implications of what it's like to be under such strict quarantine, and and especially for women and families who are literally now trapped at home in an abusive situation. So that's amazing that I've been working on.
So for our audience, New York is where tourists go. Queens is where New Yorkers live. Okay, so they know exactly what's going on. We have a question from Hanan Yahya. How do you heal yourself when you need to heal yourself?
I laugh. Alhamdulillah, I have a very funny family. so I laugh. And I also have been taking time on the weekends to benefit from some of the virtual activities. There's so much enrichment now that has gone online. So I do a virtual drawing class on the weekends. And because of Ramadan now, there's so many beautiful opportunities for spiritual connection via Zoom. So I do a spiritual Sundays, and then I have virtual drawing that I'm doing. And I just try to laugh as much as possible. So yeah, I think that's great.
Awesome. You know Hadi Al-Duba, right?
Yes, Salam Hadi.
Hadi has a question for you. What is the last epiphany or aha moment that you had?
So I was talking about this with my kids, and I think that the epiphany is that in the past few weeks then of seeing my college students, of seeing myself, seeing my kids, the aha moment is like, oh my God, like this is how easy it is for people to adapt, how easily people have normalized this new way of being. So, I just went out just today, actually, I had to run out to get something from the supermarket, and then coming back now, all of the systems and the routines that we put in place, and how to take off your gloves the right way, and how to, disinfect everything as you bring it in. My students who have just completely hopped on Zoom now and just carried on, they've pushed right through. You couldn't even tell in many cases of the work, you couldn't even tell that they were, impacted by a global pandemic. They just were so passionate, and they clung to the work, I think for them too, as a healing space as well. So it's amazing to me. The epiphany is that human beings can adapt to anything. We can just normalize anything in surprisingly little time. So I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe I hope that it's good. It's that we're resilient.
I think, yeah, that's one of the good things that we're discovering is how resilient we are, how much capable of adapting. I'll leave it at that. What do you think the ideal outcome of this pandemic at a personal level and at a collective level? What do you want people to learn and not forget? You know, at a personal level, how should we come out of this? First, as a country, what should be different about us? And personally, what should be different about us when we come out of this?
As I speak to you, I don't know if you can hear it. It's very faint tonight. The sirens are in the background. So for
Mm,
the past couple months, I live about 10 minutes from Elmhurst Hospital, another 10 minutes from Mount Sinai. So the sirens are always in the background. So if you're asking me the things that could be the outcome, is that it just is a reminder to me, um, really, to be to just pare everything down to being just grateful for breath, grateful for health, grateful to be in this moment. So it's a reminder. I'm very guilty of having to always think 10 steps ahead, 100 steps ahead. Um, I don't know if this is for better or for worse. Winston Churchill shares the same birthday as me. When I found that out, I always thought somebody who's such a to be able to come up with such strategy. And I very much connect with that. I'm always thinking and thinking. And if I do this move, what happens, 5 months later? And this moment in my life has reminded me to just kind of take the opportunity to be present and to be in a state of gratitude. Alhamdulillah. Collectively, we have a lot of work to do collectively. I think that wow, wow, coronavirus has definitely revealed for us a lot of the systems that have, the fissures have completely cracked open. And so everywhere, where there was injustice, everywhere where there were broken, outdated, ineffective systems, they are all coming to light. In the most intense way possible during this time. The inequities of the socioeconomic status, and how race and how socioeconomic status and how different people's situations, how they're faring through this virus, and so through this. So how are they coming through? Sorry. I'm getting a FaceTime while I'm on Zoom, while I'm on YouTube. It's a little bit overwhelming. I just think it's an opportunity, hopefully, for us as I'm hoping, it was him. I hope that for us as a society, we will take an opportunity that this could be a moment, this could be a pivotal moment where we rethink and rebuild forward rather than keep trying to resuscitate what wasn't working.
For the record, it's May 12, 2020. The world is at 4.23 million cases of coronavirus and over 290,000 deaths. In the United States, 1.4 million. The deaths in the United States are 83,000 and something. And New York, where Shireen lives, had 338,000 confirmed cases, almost 1/4 of all the cases in the United States, and the deaths are approaching 22,000 in New York. It's one of the cities that were hit hard, but it's also a large city with a very large population. But even though with that large population, relatively, it was hit hard. And a lot of the pictures and images came from New York were hard images. I hope that things are getting better now.
I'm not sure. I think I've become numb to it. I was mentioning to you that, now we're what might be dangerous. Again, I don't know if it's healthy or dangerous to be entering into the state of acceptance, right? So now this is just the way things are. I don't know. But what I'm acutely aware of is, again, Astoria, we're between another neighborhood called Jackson Heights and another neighborhood called Long Island City. We're all these little clusters of Western Queens. And just being able to sort of take some drives just to get out of the house, going in one direction towards where there are more South Asian and brown people and people of lower socioeconomic status, people that don't have a lot of the access, no privilege. It is a very, very stark, difficult thing to kind of see. This was a place that used to be so full of light. It was a place where me and my family felt so comfortable to go, full of such life. And it's very, very stark and barren. And it's heartbreaking now. And then if you go just 10 minutes in another direction, it looks like people are faring a lot better. People that have access, they have jobs where they can still be employed and working from home, and they're going out to a very beautiful park with the skyline of Manhattan, and they're able to still go for their jogs and play in the park. And it's sort of crazy making. So I don't know how things are anymore, because if you just a quick drive through my neighborhood, you'll see very different realities.
Right. There are different realities.
I listen to you sharing the stats about what's happening, and I'm trying actually for my own sanity to kind of stay in a little bit of a state of denial, because or a state of protective bubble, because it is intense.
Right. That's all we can do right now, is live in these bubbles, really. And that's why I said, when I said that I'm having a really good time, I think I've created that to myself. I don't think it's something that is naturally like. So I've created a bubble. I don't need to know per se what's going on outside, and I'm gonna use this time to do everything that I wanted to do with my time, and plus focusing more on my work and focusing more on my projects. We want to go to the lighter questions, but first, Adnan Jaber, says that we might forget all the lessons that we learned now. What can we do to remind ourselves of these lessons later? Are you like writing journals, or do you feel that we're gonna remember that, or is it gonna go away? It's gonna be like a dim memory.
No, it's not going to be a dim memory. I don't think it's going to be a dim memory. I think that one of the ways that we do it is what we're doing here. The idea of oral histories and storytelling. I can already tell you through my students' work, we can already see the vestiges of sort of the COVID experience, how it's had them affect when they think about their brand identities and what they want to bring to fashion, and how their worldview and what they think is important, their values. It's already been affected very much by this experience, and so I think it's going to live on sort of in the work that we do. And for me, in the art that we make, right? So I think that the art of telling stories and documenting for ourselves. I mentioned to you before we started this, making sure that we each have a stake, that we're all stakeholders in the story, because we're well aware through history that when the narrative, there's only that one point of view, it's very false. And so it's important that we have as many different voices and experiences represented.
Cool. Okay, let's start with some light questions. Amr Zahar, comedian. Have you heard of him? Amr Zahar?
I know Amr Zahar. If I tell you, I remember Amr when he had hair. Okay, so
no way. I should bring him in to the talk. Amr, really, you know him personally from a long time ago?
When he had hair.
No way.
Yes, he also grew up in Philadelphia, but I met him here in New York. But yes, I know Amr for sure, for many, many years.
Okay, he asks, what food reminds you of your childhood?
So again, I'll go with, as an older woman, my memory is what it is. So the thing that just came to my mind when I thought about the question was the wara anab, the grape leaves. So when I said I'm recreating Ramadan, so recently this weekend, actually, we spent the whole day, and it was time to get everybody in the kitchen and show my son and daughter, how to wrap the leaves and how to, to put them in the pot properly. And so it's a very beautiful ceremonial, ritualistic, act of community, actually, the grape leaves. So the grape leaves remind me of my childhood, but also as we're approaching the Eid, kahk and ghorayeba. Ghorayeba is like a butter cookie, a ridiculously fattening and yummy butter cookie. So for me, it reminded me of my childhood, because when my parents would send me to Egypt in the summers, and my grandmother, God rest her soul, she always would have tins of ghorayeba that she had made waiting for me, because she knew that they were my favorite, and they didn't have them for America. So she would send them for me. So now I have one of my best friends, and she makes the ghorayeba, and she always saves some for my children. I'm horrible at baking. So say it again.
What is ghorayeba?
Ghorayeba is just fattening butter cookies, butter and sugar, and everything right in the world is غريبة. Like it's so good. So I can type out the name, I guess, in English. But غريبة is similar to around the same time that you would get kahk, you would get غريبة. So it's one of our sweet treats. So that's something I was thinking about.
Cool. Shireen, let's get some recommendations from you. What is a book that you're reading and a book that you recommend for our audience?
So the last book that I read, actually, that was recommended to me from a dear friend, is called A Place for Us by Fatma Farheen Mirza. And I had just finished reading another book called Ghana Must Go. Let me just make sure I say the author's name. Ghana Must Go by Tayi Selesi. And so A Place for Us came right after that. And I realized that I was sort of being drawn to these books because they talk about life in the diaspora, life as new Americans, and leaving behind aspects of one's culture and one's history, but forging a new history, and also, living between, straddling two worlds. And so obviously that spoke to my experience. So it's beautifully, beautifully written. I highly recommend it. And the book that I'm reading now, my daughter just gave me for Mother's Day. It's called The Other Americans by Leila Leilani. So.
Oh yeah, that I heard about that. The Other Americans.
Yeah.
By Leila. I'm so happy that there are actually a lot of Arab Americans writers now these days.
Yeah, so I just got that for Mother's Day, so that's my next read.
Awesome. Who's this? Nice little chat, you guys. Thank you, Saeed. The Other American by Leila. How about film? What's the last film you've seen? And is there a film that you recommend?
So this is very funny. I don't watch a lot of I really don't watch a lot of American cinema. A lot of what's coming out in American cinema has long ceased to sort of entertain me.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who does anymore. So,
actually, Saeed, who had just texted in, and the kids and I, we just watched something that I never thought in a million years I would watch. But I watched Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And I had seen that film when it was just released in the year 2000. And then watching again 20 years later, this was well before coronavirus. It was maybe January or February. But watching it again 20 years later, and it hadn't aged, it was just as rich and opulent and engaging and compelling as it was 20 years ago. And now, especially when I look back and I think about so much of the hate crimes and so much of the racism against our Asian American friends, and such a beautiful, rich culture, our Chinese brothers and sisters. And I think about so much beauty in their storytelling. Yeah.
Here is the trailer. I've actually watched it. I've watched it when it first came out. How long has it been?
20.
Oh my God!
An infinite mystery.
Can't believe
a legend was born.
I haven't seen it since then. But it's very visual. It's very beautiful. So if anyone didn't watch it, it's really it started a new genre.
She loved a daring outlaw. And a princess destined to become a warrior.
All right, so that's the last film before YouTube flags us for copyright infringement.
It was just amazing. It's definitely, and the thing that's unusual too is that I find that now there's so many. It's so difficult to find a movie that's good for intergenerational gatherings. This one is for everyone. My son, I mean, that was something so beautiful too. My son, who clearly did not exist 20 years ago, was able to come to it with fresh eyes and love it just as much as I did.
Wow, you just shocked me that it's 20 years ago.
Yes.
I think that's the last action film I've seen, probably.
Yes, and
Just
it's
kidding.
done so beautifully.
What is there a show? Of course, everyone. Netflix. Tell me that you've watched Rami.
That was on my list. I have it on my list.
Yeah,
And of course,
you have to
I have
watch.
to say it on me as an Egyptian American, 1,000% yes. So yeah,
Egyptian American living in New York. I mean, that's like your story.
that's أقل حاجة عندنا. Like, minimum I have to talk about Rami. But cross-culturally, yes. So cross-culturally, I will say too that my kids and I, over the past couple of years, we just we look forward to watching One Day at a Time. So that's about a Latin, a Hispanic American family, a single mother, a boy and a girl, and a grandmama in the picture, abuela, and just sort of watching how they again too, like how do they balance the two cultures. The show itself is very responsive to what was going on,
What is it called?
culturally. One Day at a Time.
Oh, okay. I thought you're saying One Day at a Time.
Mhm. One day at a time. And so it was something that we could connect it. It had a little bit of humor for the kids. The abuela reminded them so much of their nena. So yes, absolutely. It's just a very nice sort of family.
Yeah, and what do you think about Rami? Isn't it interesting?
Interesting.
I
Um,
think it's
I
very
love
Muslimish,
Rami.
isn't it?
Again too, representation. It's, I know that he's very brave. I love this new generation, the youth. They're so brave in a way that we are not, or I can speak for myself in a way that I'm not. So remember, like, so for my generation, and I grew up, everything was aib, and everything is like, so girls don't do this and we don't do this. What are the people gonna say? So, but this generation, he couldn't care less. And I love their courage and their bravery. I love that they're out there. And so Rami, I kind of look at it from afar, like, oh my, hey, Zay, Rami, Zay, like everything he's doing. I'm like, like, what are the people going to say? So it's like, I can't turn away, right? So it's like this train wreck of like, oh my God, he's telling all the secrets, but it's marvelous that the secrets are coming out. So yes, and I know he takes a lot of slack from within the Muslim community, from without a Muslim community.
Does he?
So you have to be really brave to put yourself out there. So yeah, it's definitely
Season 2 is coming up in a week or
yes,
so.
Good.
Yeah, I thought it is very honest. I thought that it is very interesting because if Arab Americans watch it, it's going to have the same reaction as the one depicted in the show. So the older generation will get a little bit mad, and the younger generation will connect and be embarrassed. So it's interesting. It's a very honest conversation. I thought it's very Muslimish, and it's very New Yorker. There's something about New York that's peculiar. Like, it's different. The Muslim culture in New York is different from the Muslim culture anywhere in the world, in America, because New York has its own it's a word within the word, right? It's a small word where everyone gets lost, where everyone does not exist individually anymore. It's you hide within people. It's not a small city. It's not a small village, where people see each other or know each other. So you can be wherever you want to be, and you take the subway like magic. You go under the ground, you go up the ground to a new world. You go under the ground, you go up the ground in a new world. I wrote a poem about that, about New York, after the first time I visited in 2013.
And don't forget, I was him too. We keep, we conflate, and I'm first of all guilty of it. And when we conflate, like being, Arab American and Muslim American, and then don't forget, and again, like I said, one of the most amazing things about being in New York, the Muslim community here, we've got we have our Arabs, we also have our African brothers and sisters. So one of my newest favorite places to go in New York is going to Harlem Malcolm X market to go shopping for African goods. And they have African food markets. And then we have our Indonesian mosque just 2 steps away. And then we have where there's a huge community of Latino Muslims as well. So there's just, again, too, like being reminded that this is, and then we have our, African American people who have been here for generations and generations. And so, we're able to kind of just, there's this beautiful connection, despite, country of origin.
Do you feel comfortable your children watching Rami?
Why are we back to Rami again? No, I don't know. I don't know if my daughter has watched it. My daughter's a college student. I get it. There's a lot. There comes a point in a mama's life where you have to kind of look away. I don't know if she's watched it or not. We don't discuss it. But my son, I don't think he's watched it. I have one of the rare, I can't believe this. You won't believe it. I have one of the rare teenagers who doesn't follow social media. So I don't think he's been watching it. He's one of the last holdouts.
Awesome. That's great. Let him read Cal Newport.
Can you put it in the chat?
Sure. Cal Newport is an anti-social media guru from Silicon Valley, a billionaire himself. And he's written deep work, he's written digital minimalism, he has a blog, and he continues to write. He's one of the gurus of digital minimalism. He's gonna love him. He has a TED talk on why should you cancel your social media.
Oh, he will love that. My son is very much on the movement of canceling social media. I have my sister as well who's canceling, who's against social media. So there is a strain of the family that is anti-social media.
Yeah, apparently I'm not with that. But I mean, I am with the concept of minimalism. I mean, I use social media totally. It's a different subject, but you have to have a lot of control on how to use it for it not to be addictive. So I am a digital minimalist. With all this that I'm doing, I'm still a digital minimalist. So, but that's a different topic, and I'm not in denial.
I'm impressed. I don't think, in all honesty, I can say I'm a minimalist in any of the spheres of my life. But yes, I agree. Balance is key.
Okay, I have few more questions. First of all, let's see, a website that you recommend. I mean, this is something that people don't visit websites anymore, and I feel is going to come back.
I think for me, one of the things I also too, I was like I said, I'll be honest, I do visit it, but via social media to get there. But as for me also too, for my students, I often try to recommend websites and blogs. So the one that I recommended was Hyperallergenic, and it's a leading voice in contemporary perspectives on art, culture, and more. So challenging the status quo. They go beyond the surface to investigate the inner workings of art institutions and systems with a great focus on inclusion and representation. So, yeah, so.
Here we go. I'm going to share it.
Yeah.
This is how it looks like. Interesting.
I really talk about sort of the systems that are driving, how we consume art, how we engage with art. And, it's having us question, again, things that, I don't know, maybe many people, or if they're really thinking about sort of the business of museums, or also the ethics of museums, the relationship and the dynamic of museums to community. I'm on the neighborhood council for the Museum of the Moving Image here in Queens. And it's part of their mission is to sort of reshape and redefine the dynamic between museums and cultural institutions in their communities, so that we feel that it is an accessible space that represents us. So Hyperallergenic, I think, also too does like a nice job at sort of having us really question those systems.
Great. I want to also take the opportunity to share your website, Shireen, for a second here. So those interested in following Shireen's work, please follow her website. And I am posting the name here. Shireen, I have a couple more questions because we have a couple minutes more. I have a question from, let me start with Hadi's question. What is the worst thing? Let me start with actually Talal's question. Talal's question says, what is the best thing COVID-19 pandemic made you discover about yourself?
I think that the best thing about myself, it's hard to ask one about oneself. I think that the best thing it brought out in me maybe is the idea of nurturing. And so wanting to keep my family safe and wanting to keep our community safe, the community work that I do, and trying to just support and make sure that we're all safe. And when they say put on the masks, and when they say social distance, and starting to be more aware of the other and be aware of each other, I think that I just have sort of that fierce streak of wanting to make sure that we're all okay.
Hmm.
So I hope that that's
Protectiveness, you would call it?
I
Or
hope,
protectiveness?
yeah, the
Mhm.
nurturing protectiveness.
So that protectiveness now has played its role,
Yes.
Your kids might have complained about it before, but now it is very important.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Hadi, on the other hand, asks, what is the worst thing COVID pandemic made you discover about yourself?
What's the worst thing about me?
Not
I
the worst thing about you, just something that you
should.
discovered. Yeah.
I think that because I'm so off of all of my schedules, like I just very much sort of had a routine, and I would go to the gym, and then this was the time that I would, have this appointment, and this is what, and I just had such a routine. When I'm thrown off of my routine, it's very difficult for me to like climb my way out. So, excuse me, there's so many times where I think I should go out for a walk. It's important to get vitamin D. I should just put on my clothes and just head out the door and just walk. It doesn't hurt to walk, but I can't even do that because I'm just so off of my schedule. I just kind of, so yes, I think that's something not so great about me. I should probably have more discipline, I think. But
Mm. So you lost some discipline due to the disruption of your schedule.
yeah, I'm so discombobulated and it's so disrupted that it's
Mhm.
gonna, I can't even imagine. Now, if I look at Shireen like 3 months ago, I'm like, how did I have that much energy? How did I get on the subway? Like now it'll be amazing to see if I can relive
Yeah.
the excitement. But
I thought I was gonna run every day when this started. Yeah, that lasted a day and a half.
I run back and forth to the kitchen from the computer. That's about it.
Uh, have you met Abdul in New York? Do you
I think
remember?
we did meet him, yes. I
Yeah,
think
Abdul has a question. What is he's in Saudi Arabia. He's a very well-established filmmaker and a film critic, really. Interviewed often on Saudi TV now about films.
wow.
His question is, what is first country you are going to visit after this is over, and why?
For sentimental reasons, I have to say that I want to go to Egypt. It's been enough time now, and now even more so. In this time, all we think about is what brings us comfort when we think about how important family is. So that's if we can imagine airline travel again, if we can imagine traveling and leaving the country, if it ever becomes possible again. The
Where
thing
are you from Egypt, Shireen? Which
from
part of Egypt?
from
Sorry?
Alexandria, Egypt.
Oh, Scandinavia. Okay. And the question from me, uh, if you had a magical closet in your bedroom that teleports you into a specific place every time, where would it be?
This is so easy. This one is easy. Come on now. I would be at the beach every time. There is no question. Every time. My feet would be in the sand. The sun would be on my body. Very hot sun. No problem. I would be at the sand. Those
Where?
sounds of the
Which
water.
beach?
If we're being picky, I mean, Sharm el-Sheikh is not bad, to be honest. If we can
Mm.
pick and choose.
Come on, you're from Scandinavia, and you can have the Mediterranean
We have the Mediterranean, but nothing is.
marina.
When you go Al Sahel on the north coast,
Uh,
a little bit less crowded, and it's more spacious to be able to just sort of have that peace that you also need, like the beach as an escape, as a healing, nurturing place.
mhm.
So, going to those regions is the first thing that came to my mind.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Shireen. With that, we come to an end of our interview. I want to thank you so much for your time and reflections and opinions. Is there anything that we left? Is there any final words you'd like to say?
I feel like the time went so fast. I feel like the time went so fast. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Wissam. I told you that for me, this has been like after from the past couple months of doing the heavy lifting of teaching online and facing a pandemic and navigating our way through Ramadan and all of this. And so to just invite me for a conversation and the beauty of human connection and just sharing our stories, it's sacred and it's really important. And I just can't thank you enough for putting together this project to give us platform for our voices and our shared experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And stay safe, you and your family.
Thank
To
you.
our followers on Dearborn Blog, thank you very much for watching this episode, for your participation. This episode will be published on Dearborn Blog Facebook and on YouTube, Dearborn Blog YouTube, and it will also be podcasted. Dearborn Blog podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, and Stitcher. And see you on the next episode. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Salam.